I tried to report the lived experiences and quote-unquote the facts in the words of the people who participated in the book. I don't put words in their mouth, and I don't agree or disagree. I tell what they told me. I tell the story that they told me. If you are a seer and you need to look at, hi Marilyn, my comadre. You look at, híjole, you just brought me back to, what year? The 70s. So I'm telling you, this is like another atmosphere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the readings. On page 54, you will see a little bit of the legacy of Blanca Alvarado, and that her parents came from northern New Mexico in Taos and Las Vegas. And then what I want you to read with me is the second and third paragraph at night. You don't have to read it loud if you don't want to. The migration of Blanca Alvarado's family, the Sanchez's, was precipitated by the closing of the mines, forcing the family to move to California with the intent of settling in Los Angeles. However, not finding Los Angeles to their liking, they moved north and set up residence in Santa Clara County, where the family was contracted to do agricultural work for local ranchers of San Jose, the city that would become Alvarado's hometown. Ernestina Garcia, whose parents were born in Mexico, remembers that Apa and Ama taught us a strong identification with the culture and instilled in us a responsibility for fulfilling civic duties and democratic participation. A transnational migrant, her father came to the United States first before bringing her family. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read, and I can never talk like Ernie, okay, but I can read like Ernie. Ernestina said about that, Apa se venía y se iba para atrás. Después de que se acabó la revolución, se casó con mi mamá. Very young age, my mamá. And then trajo a su mamá y su hermana y mi mamá y a mis hermanas, las que nacieron allá. He was not an activist. Trabajaba pel ranchero para poder mantenernos a todos y procuraba trabajar con contrato que acababan after a certain time. They provided a house, but they had to work, took it out of their wages. They gave him nothing. Okay, this is a woman, Ernestina Garcia, who recalls the difficulty of living in a segregated state, the state of Arizona. Okay, and I believe it had recently become a state when her family moved there. The state of Arizona had separate education. And even when they could have the ranchers, workers' kids come to school, they separated them. There was a playground separation, there was a room separation. And so she remembers what it was like. And she was very anti-classist and anti-racist, more anti-racist. What she said, if you haven't lived in my skin and experienced the deprivation, the miseducation, the racism that I experienced as a child in a school in Arizona, you know, where on one side they have 5 fountains and they're really clean, and on the other side they have a spigot, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and that's what they were forced to drink. So again, the stories here that they're telling us are connected to the formation and the development of consciousness, of caring for others as a symbol of caring for yourself, okay? That if you start out there and you work with people and bring in what they have and use what you have to tell a narrative and a story, to bring that point back, is you will facilitate the changing of your society. It sounds like it's really romantic, but it really wasn't, because the people that I write about, the people that you're hearing about, were amazing heroes and change agents.
That's very profound, Josie.
Who's speaking to me? Oh.
I said that's very profound, what you just finished saying.
They said it.
Yeah, no, I know you're sharing.
Okay. They said it, and they gave me the gift to repeat it. When I look at the Chicanas of the baby boomer generation, Delia Alvarez's mother was born in Colton and her father came from Arizona. Alvarez was born in the agricultural community of Salinas, California. Like Soto of the Depression generation, her family owned property and were not employed in agriculture. Okay. The assumption we would make at the time that we were active in the Chicano movement is that she wasn't a Chicana. And why wasn't she a Chicana? Because she had economic, resilience, I guess we could say, with having their own home. Born in Cupertino, California, Cecilia Arroyo had a father who came from Mexico and a mother from Arizona. So we're able to see how the interactions between the states and the interactions among people create that. Josie Romero insisted on telling me that she came from Texas. She was the best Tejana I know. Although they were poor, she was brought up in a healthy, supportive environment. She recalled, I remember having very little to eat. We were so poor, but you always felt you belonged. You always felt that somebody was always there. The presence of her extended family, where grandpa and grandma were always watching to make sure mama and dad did the right thing, and they would scold them like if they didn't, added to her security. On her paternal side, it was a different story. The German extended family were cold and distant, even though they were all raised in Mexico. On my mother's side, they were Indian and Mexicanos, and they were much more united and involved. She's talking about having gained this insight as a child with what she saw around her and the interactions she had. Rosa Amador, her father was born in Mexico and raised in Chicago, and her mother was born in Michigan. She is, and from there she actually came to be born in San Jose, and from there the family moved to Chicago and then Pennsylvania, okay? So she said that growing up in Pennsylvania, she didn't experience much discrimination. She says, growing up in a close-knit community with the same kids from the same time you started kindergarten all the way through 6th grade, it was a comfortable, secure, and good experience. Okay, she would later come to rethink that statement, but that's to be continued. Okay, Kathy Chavez Napoli, a native San Josean, traced her ancestry to California, and she recently was recognized as a citizen of an indigenous group, because that's her ancestry on her paternal side. And you know what, I have that information, but it's not in this book because it wasn't the case. Kathy went to San Jose State and she found out a way to help the community. And she began by mentoring, tutoring, and working with students whom she felt could use her support. Elisa Marina Alvarado, now before Coleman, was born in San Francisco. Her father came from Mexico, of Irish and Purepecha ancestry. And his mother is Irish and English on one side and Cuban on the other side. Okay, so people have multiple connections to different ethnic groups, even in their own family. Felix Alvarez came from South Texas, and he says, at the age of 10 or 11, because they had been victimized by the repatriaciones, when the United States kicked out of supposedly undocumented illegal aliens, they also kicked out Razo, who had been born here. They carted him off to Mexico. So when his father and uncle, realized they were American citizens, they just walked back on their own. Okay, so again, how many of us know that the revolution pushed so many people forward? How many of us even make that connection? How many of us know that, that people were repatriated even though they were U.S. citizens, their parents, the children, and that was close to 1 million, okay? Again, the pattern of the cycle of hate, racism, anti-Mexicanism, and it's not getting any better, I'm sorry to say to you. At least I guess what do they call those of us? I'm a pessimist, but not really. Okay. I'm glad the people I'm not reading right now are not here because I thought if they come, I'll read about them. Because okay. Cultural, social, and political life. Okay. So, and I'm going to start with Blanca again because I think she has a broad spectrum of. I knew her since I was a little girl. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm not that young. Okay. In her daily life, Blanca Alvarado upheld a strong sense of fairness with her family and in the community. Thinking back to her childhood, she recalled 2 instances of inequality and exclusion. She remembered the Plancarte family who came directly from Mexico and were considered outsiders and different. She recalls standing up to one of the children and a classmate. I remember Betty Plancarte and feeling tremendous pity for the way in which she was treated, and a couple of times got into confrontation with other people because she was treated badly. But I also remember feeling resentment towards my own family for the way they looked down on the Plancartes. Inequality and internalized racism were at the core of her sense of justice, fairness, and equality. If you know Blanca, she's not perfect. But if you know Blanca, she carries all those attributes in what she does for everyday life in San Jose. She started organizing when she was in high school. And I'm going to just give you, as far as socioeconomic class is concerned, Alvarado brought up those times in high school when she organized a few Chicano peers. Notice she's calling Chicano. We gravitated toward each other. With Mrs. Chris at Catholic Social Services as the mentor, they organized Club Tapatio, a social group with a cultural vision. Alvarado and the other club members wanted to do some good, so we managed to organize food and clothing drives for the poor. So there again is a very special small aspect of being organized within a group for a purpose. Without the Club Tapatio, the San Jose High School would have been boring, if not dismal. Esther Medina was a very active woman who had like 3 businesses prior to going into work with the war on poverty. She created the first women's training center in the county of Santa Clara. And so she was really an interesting woman. And of all the people whose story I tell, she's the one that had the father that hired somebody to come over and teach him formal Spanish. She's the one whose mother and father taught her about the history of Mexico and the connections to the United States. So we're talking about people who don't have formal education and may be included from it, but they are finding other ways to teach what they know, learn more, and impart it to their children. As early as high school, Medina addressed her peers' social needs, becoming instrumental in the establishment of the Latin American Club in 1952 or 53. It was her awareness of ethnic and class exclusion that motivated her, since she had noted that unless you were really dressed and came from some kind of wealthy family, you didn't belong to any of the clubs. The way she saw it, Mexican people made contributions. And people need to know about us. We need to become part of the system, but not to be absorbed by the system, to be recognized as our own people.